An exclusive interview with one of the presidential candidates.
I'm pledging as President of the United States to be the most frugal president ever elected.
Gary Johnson on the ballot in all 50 states, but he's not on the debate stage.
You're not happy with Trump. You're not happy with Hillary. There is a third option.
Plus, the candidates face off in Congressional District 1. This is Arizona Week. Hello, and thanks for joining us. With 5 weeks to go until the presidential election, the candidates are ramping up their visits to battleground states. Arizona, historically a conservative stronghold, now considered up for grabs. This week, Donald Trump made his 6th visit to the state, and Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, drew hundreds at his Phoenix rally. Before the rally, I spoke with Gary Johnson. Here's the first part of my interview with the former governor of New Mexico.
I've self-declared myself as a libertarian since 1971. So in 71, I was a registered Democrat, became a registered Republican, but always, like I say, identified myself as a libertarian. My first vote for Libertarian for president was Berglund against Reagan in his second term, because Reagan blew the lid off of deficits. And I really thought that he was about smaller government, but like I say, when it came to spending, that was certainly not the case.
A Republican governor in New Mexico, which is pretty Democratic. How did you pull that off?
And myself, along with Bill Weld, both of us, same resume. And when you're fiscally conservative over the top, I mean, really pinching pennies, I think it proves a couple things. One is that regardless of party, I think people really do appreciate good stewardship of tax dollars. And then socially inclusive. Look, people should be able to make their own choices in their own lives, period. As long as those choices don't put other people in harm's way. And right now, running for president, I think people are skeptical, and I'm one of them, that when it comes to our military interventions, it has not resulted in a safer world. And specifically, military interventions in support of regime change, which in my lifetime, I cannot think of one example where that has turned out better and not worse, and yet we continue to do that. Add to that, free market. Bill Weld and myself are the only free market candidates running for president, believing that free markets ultimately more U.S. jobs, not less U.S. jobs.
Why do you want to be commander-in-chief after hearing all this about military, national defense, foreign policy?
Well, I would not be doing this if I didn't think I could do a really good job. And then from a personal standpoint, I think this would be one of humankind's great experiences. I really do. And I really enjoyed my terms as governor, really getting in the middle of things, doing an analysis on everything from the standpoint of, will it make things better? And very simply, if it made things better, legislation that made things better, I supported it. If it didn't, I vetoed it, and I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. So when you think of a state that's 2-to-1 Democrat, New Mexico, and I vetoed all that legislation, you would think maybe just the opposite, that holy cow, how did a person like that ever get reelected? Well, I'm back to good stewardship of tax dollars. I'm pledging as President of the United States to be the most frugal president ever elected. I don't think you can talk about balancing the federal budget if you're not going to cut back spending in the office of president itself.
Why you? Why not Secretary Clinton? Why not Mr. Trump?
Well, Trump is all over the board, and it starts with immigration. And being a former border state governor, I think the notion of deporting 11 million undocumented workers, that's going to hit Arizona just as hard as it's going to hit New Mexico. And the recognition that 11 million undocumented workers has to do with the government setting up quotas, and you can't get a work visa, and yet the jobs exist, so you come across without the documentation. Building a wall across the border, I think we would end up being way on the wrong side of history with that one. And he goes on to talk about free markets and that he's anything but going to force Apple to make their iPads and their iPhones in the United States, going to apply a 35% tariff on imported goods. when currently those tariffs are at about 1.4%? Who's going to pay for that? Well, you and I are going to pay for that. And neither candidate, Clinton or Trump, are talking about reforming the entitlements, Medicaid and Medicare. And Lorraine, I don't think it's an option to not talk about reforming those two things because they're leading this country into bankruptcy. Add to that Social Security. Look, for young people, balancing the federal budget is all about young people. I'm going to get my retirement, I'm going to get my health care, but young people, you're going to have to pay for it and it won't be around for you? That's not fair. Military spending. The commission, the BRAC Commission, established in the mid-90s, said that we could cut bases by 20–25% more, and that hasn't happened. Hillary Clinton, look, there isn't anything that the government can't solve. There's a government program for everything. I think there is a certainty with Hillary Clinton that taxes will not go down. They're going to only go up. Rules and regulations are going to get worse. They're not going to get better. And then I have to say that I think that she has been pay to play. I think that she's representative of government at its worst, crony capitalism. Government getting involved, picking winners and losers, and she's been right in the middle of that, and that's the last thing that we really need. What we need is equal opportunity. Having been governor of New Mexico, it's something government can provide, equal opportunity. Just giving you and I the same shots as Walmart or Verizon or whomever. Just give us a level playing field. Don't restrict us from getting in those markets if that's something we choose to do.
More with Governor Johnson in a few moments, but now an interview with Juan Hernandez, an advisor for the Johnson-Weld campaign. A longtime Republican strategist, Hernandez has worked in politics in both the U.S. and Mexico.
I wrote an article for the Washington Post called Not A Nor B. You can go out there and read it. And in the article I say, is it not possible that we could have a better option? I can't see myself voting for Trump nor Hillary. In this great nation of the United States, the example of democracy, the example of liberties around the world, can we not come up with a better option? And one of the guys in the campaign wrote to me and said, Juan, I remember you from McCain. I was also working on the McCain campaign. There is option. See, it's Gary Johnson. And I said, okay, tell me more about Gary Johnson. And the more he told me about Gary, and then I had the honor of meeting him, I was totally, I bought into it, and I'm passionately now supporting him.
Part of your job is with Latino outreach. Your background in Mexico and here in the U.S., what do you hope to do for his campaign in attracting Hispanics?
On the one hand, we're sick and tired of the insults of the right. Trump has insulted our family members, our friends, Mexico, the undocumented, who are a blessing to this nation. But also, Obama supposedly was going to give us a place at the table, was going to work with us Latinos, and was going to push for immigration reform. And he has not promoted immigration reform, not when the Democrats had both the House and the Senate. And he has deported, the executive, through Homeland Security, has deported more undocumented people than the last 19 presidents put together. I'm sorry, that is not a president who's been working for the Latino community.
How do you get Gary Johnson on the debate stage?
Some people think that the commission is an organization that is created to, for example, make sure that the elections are pure, there's no corruption there. That's not what was created. This commission, it's a commission, was created by Republicans and Democrats to make sure that other parties who don't have a chance to really compete don't get in. And so they decided, the Republicans and Democrats, that the cutoff would be at 15. I think they should have included other criteria. For example, that the candidate be in all 50 ballots. We are in all 50 ballots with Trump and with Hillary, and we're the only ones that are on all 50 ballots. So it's quite unfair. Those are the rules that they set, and the media, the individuals who are organizing the debates, have agreed to that. We have to get to 15%.
How do you get Arizona, which has emerged as a battleground state, how do you get Arizona to side with Gary Johnson?
Well, I don't think that Arizona is as difficult as people would think. On the one hand, Arizona is not that state that is anti-immigrant that I'm sorry to say a lot of the nation thinks. Polls in this state have shown that 60–70% of people in Arizona support legalizing the 11 million. Definitely not deporting them and separating families. They don't believe, up to 60-something%, in building a wall. So Arizona is not a Trump state. On the other hand, Arizona tends to be a Republican state, a la Gary Johnson. If we can just get the message out that Gary Johnson believes in small government, believes in less taxes, believes in a strong military, but getting out of places like Afghanistan where we may be doing more bad than good for those good people, Arizona should look our way if we are able to get to them with a message.
You are a Hispanic Republican who is
Amen.
on the Libertarian ticket.
Yes, I am.
What is your message to Arizona?
Arizona, just Google Gary Johnson. Just give us the opportunity. Just listen to the message that we've got. You're not happy with Trump. You're not happy with Hillary. There is a third option. Just give him 5 minutes. Google it. And I think that you will be enamored by him.
Could Latinos be a game changer this election?
I think that Latinos are a group that we can win over. We have the millennials. Latinos are so disappointed with the Obama administration, but they're going to go for Hillary if they don't hear that there is another option. Like yours truly, I cannot vote for Trump. That has insulted me and my family, but I cannot vote either for a party that has not kept its promises.
Gary Johnson has not been invited to participate in a presidential debate. The Commission on Presidential Debates requires that candidates have at least a 15% rating in the polls. Gary Johnson is close and says his presence on the debate stage could change the outcome of this election. Here again is Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson. You've taken some heat for things like Aleppo, naming a foreign leader. How do you rebound from that and move forward as you're trying to get on that debate stage?
Well, that's an easy one to remedy, and of course, underlying issues. I'm very aware of the underlying issues, but you know what? Those things can be learned, and if you've got an iPad with you, those things can be overcome in about 5 seconds. But what can't be overcome is honesty and integrity, and I have lived my life that way, and so has Bill Weld. So we're offering an alternative here that we're going to tell the truth. When you tell the truth, that means you're going to admit mistakes, and we all make mistakes, but there's not a quicker way to fix mistakes than to acknowledge them in the first place. And then I think the one unforgivable in life is hypocrisy, saying one thing and doing another. And neither Bill Weld or myself are hypocrites. And I think that that is what really is needed in this election, something that is sorely lacking on both sides.
Arizona is a conservative state. We have people in the state who are still trying to figure out who they cast their vote for come November. Why should they choose a Libertarian candidate?
Well, that we occupy this big 6-lane highway right down the middle. We're fiscally conservative, we're socially inclusive, skeptical when it comes to military interventions, and free market, believing in more U.S. jobs, not less U.S. jobs. You don't have to guess on an outcome from from Johnson and Weld. We were both former Republican governors that served in heavily Democrat states. Certainty, taxes will not go up. The two of us didn't raise 1 penny of tax in our 4 terms as governors. We were not wallflowers. There are issues that have to be addressed in this country. Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, military spending. If we want to put our heads in the sand and pretend that they don't exist, well, we're going to find ourselves in a really bad way down the road. And the bad way down the road is there will be, in my opinion, whiplash inflation to go along with continuing to basically print money to cover bills that we don't have the money to cover those bills for.
What does a President Johnson White House look like? What is the government like? Describe it to me.
Well, that it will be accountable, that it will be transparent, that it will be honest. And in that context of honesty, I have a real aversion to misspeaking. And if I ever misspeak and say something that I shouldn't have, I'm going to be the first one to say that, hey, I've misspoken. if I realize that what I've been saying is not right, I'm the first one to recognize that going down the road. I think that's been missing in government for a long time. And then how about a frugal president? Does it really, does presidential travel really entail snarling the city that the president flies into? And certainly Phoenix and surrounding areas have been affected by the president coming and freeways getting shut off. And I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek, but does it really cost $10 million for the president to go down to Walgreens? Well, it appears that way, and that's existed for a long time, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to be a good steward of the constitutional office of President of the United States. I'm not getting elected king, and I'm not getting elected dictator. So how about somebody with some humility and not a wallflower? All those issues that I talked about are very significant, and all those issues that I talked about are going to be heated debates and discussions that need to take place in this country.
How do you get on the debate stage? We have 6 weeks remaining.
Well, I think it's a travesty that I'm not on the debate stage now, that currently I am polling higher than Ross Perot was when he was allowed on the debate stage. So the debate stage, Presidential Debate Commission. It's a commission made up of Democrats and Republicans. And 50% of Americans right now, when they're going to register to vote, are registering as independent. Where is that representation? Well, it's me, and it's Bill Weld. We're leading right now among independents. We're leading right now among young people, millennials. We're leading among active military personnel. What does that say about what I'm saying regarding the military? And you talk about the debates and qualifying for the debates. I'm not getting any national security briefings. I wish I were, and of course that would be integral to having the job as president. I think that this could be big egg on everybody's face if I end up getting elected with all of this. And the hypocrisy. Look, I'm not allowed on the debate stage because I occasionally can't cross the I and dot the T on a foreign leader or a geographic location. Look, we're putting our military in harm's way. We are, and I say we, there are citizens caught in these crossfires when we get involved in regime change, when we get involved in civil wars, where hundreds of thousands of innocent people are dying. I'm not hanging that on the heads of our military. Our military are just doing what they are ordered to do. I'm putting this on the heads of politicians that can dot the I's and cross the T's, and so that then qualifies them for all of the killing, really, that occurs in this world. Our own military, killed, maimed, hurt for the rest of their lives, psychologically ruined for the rest of their lives, and then, like I say, hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians that end up dying in these crossfires.
The chances of winning this presidency are low, but you are not giving up.
Well, no, and being the right person at the right time, I'll get lifelong solace from having done that.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Yes, Lorraine, thank you very much.
On to a congressional race now. Here in Arizona, the 1st Congressional District covers much of northeastern Arizona and touches the northernmost part of Pima County. The candidates, Pinal County Sheriff Paul Babu and former legislator Tom O'Halloran, recently debated in Phoenix on our sister station, KAET. My colleague Christopher Conover has the story.
Arizona's 1st Congressional District is one of the largest in the U.S., stretching from Tucson's northern suburbs to the Arizona-Utah line. It includes Flagstaff and all or part of 10 Indian reservations, and it touches on 11 of the state's 15 counties. Pinal County Republican Paul Babu is facing Flagstaff Democrat Tom O'Halloran in the race. Taxes and spending are top issues.
The government has become too large and too costly, evidenced by a $20 trillion deficit. We've got to cut spending. We can't continue to think that we're going to spend our way into prosperity or tax our way. That's failed. It's failed here in the state of Arizona. It's failed nationally. We need new leaders.
Investing in our future is a priority for me. Making sure we live within our means is a priority to me. I'm not going to just haphazardly cut across the board when we have education issues to deal with, addressing our infrastructure needs, addressing the security of our nation, whether it's with our military or our borders. These are prime areas that we have to invest in the future, not just move back on.
On one key economic issue, the candidates are in agreement. The district's coal mining, which feeds electric power plants, must be protected.
I will fight to preserve coal as an energy source, and not just because of the 3,000 to 5,000 jobs directly connected to those generating stations, the coal mines. We've heard Hillary say she wants to close coal mines and unemploy these miners, and then the train conductors and engineers, but also our electric rates. Everybody pays electric, right? The estimates are increases of 30, it could be higher as 40%, immediately passed on to ratepayers.
I have gone around this state saying we are going to protect those jobs. That it was this regulatory environment that the EPA put forward without talking to our local communities, without understanding the needs of our school districts, without understanding the long-term viability of a national energy plan, and not as a country, whether it's been the last decade or the last 2 decades, investing seriously in clean coal technology. We need to do those things.
Both candidates have personal issues that have crept into the campaign. Babu has been tied to reports of abuse when he was headmaster at a school for emotionally troubled children in Massachusetts. He says he didn't know about the abuse and was cleared.
The investigation started years before I was there and concluded after I left. I was never named in any of this stuff, and nobody was found responsible.
The argument, though, is that you were headmaster and executive director.
Yes.
If you didn't know, you should have known.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about that before. Is here, this investigation found nobody was responsible.
They closed the school down.
No, they didn't. That school lasted
was
3
under
years.
court order.
3 years after
the
I was there,
investigation kept going,
and it moved to Florida. So you've got to. If you're
they
gonna,
already
if you're
had the Florida school opened up, Paul.
No, they did not.
O'Halloran has questions to answer also. Specifically, he was a Republican as a state lawmaker and is now a Democrat running for Congress.
Has that person in the past, what have they done? And if they have taken a look at their party and said, I think you're wrong, and I am going to make sure children of our state are protected over the fact that you're threatening to take my chairmanship away, I trust that.
And the buzz now, wrapping up our political coverage, my colleague Christopher Conover. Christopher, CD1, not traditionally a very popular race, but we have a contested race because of the candidates.
We have a contested race because the current seat holder, Ann Kirkpatrick, is running against John McCain for U.S. Senate. So we have a rare open seat. And this district, because it is so large, it's about the 10th largest in the country, stretches from the northern part of Tucson all the way to the Utah border. It's a very diverse district. Down here in the southern end, it's more conservative, but you get to the northern part and it is much more liberal. So it is an interesting district to run in as a result.
Okay, moving on, Arizona now being considered a battleground state. Donald Trump making yet another visit to Arizona. What does that say about the interest in this area?
For the first time in a long time, we're seeing presidential candidates. If you remember all the way back to March, which seems like such a long time ago, we had almost all of the presidential candidates during the primary in one weekend. Between you and I, we covered just about all of them in one weekend right before the primary. We thought that might be the end of it. But new polls out this week have Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton tied at 42% in Arizona. So this is a state that is up for grabs, a normally reliable red state. We've all heard, we've all said, the last time it went for a Democrat for president was 1996, Bill Clinton. Before that, I think it was the 1800s. So it is a normally reliable Republican state that Donald Trump is going to have to work to win.
That being said, Hillary Clinton has not made a recent visit to Arizona. Does that mean she's not concerned about this state?
The last time we saw Secretary Clinton was right before the primary in March. She's close right now, as we said, tied at 42%. A lot of people expect her to show up, or maybe Michelle Obama or a very high-level surrogate for her before the election.
but she hasn't invested a lot of money here. She does have offices here, there are ads here, but not a lot of money, and she is tying Donald Trump, at least in the most recent poll. So she may not have to spend a lot of money here in order to possibly win it, and she can spend her time and money in places with more electoral votes like Florida that she's also very close in.
All right, Gary Johnson, he is a factor. Given that he comes to Arizona, he draws hundreds, if not close to 1,000 in Phoenix, and he could in fact shake up this electoral college.
He really can. The latest polls have him in that 7–8% range, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is significant. He's been as high as 9.2%. There is a theory out there that he could possibly do very well in New Mexico. Favorite son. That's 5 electoral votes. If the electoral map falls the way it is expected to fall with no big surprises, Secretary Clinton would have 267 electoral votes, Donald Trump would have about 265, and there's Gary Johnson with potentially 5 electoral votes out of New Mexico. You have to have 270 electoral votes to be president. Neither of the two main party candidates would have it. It would then be up to the House of Representatives who would be the next president. Now, some people say, wait a minute, a third party candidate winning even a state like New Mexico, that's a small state, how realistic is that? Polls have him over 25% in that state. That's not a win, but it is significant with 30 some odd days to go.
And that has never happened in the history of the presidency, has it?
No, we have not had this type of a scenario before. And while everybody says, oh, that's crazy, it can't happen, there are a lot of things that have happened over the last year in this presidential race that people originally said that's crazy and can't happen. So this year, a lot of bets are off.
Gary Johnson, will we see him on the debate stage before November?
That's going to be a big lift for him. The Presidential Debate Commission requires him to be polling at 15%, and the highest he's gotten is 9%, 9.2, 9.4. So that's a big lift for him. Could it happen? Sure, but probably not likely to happen.
And as he said, it could be a game changer in this election should he make it his name out there. And he is on all 50 ballots.
He's on all the ballots.
States.
Exactly. If he were to get on the stage for the last debate or the third debate even, it would be a game changer. Even more people would get to see him. There are a lot of Republicans who don't like Donald Trump who are looking at Mr. Johnson as a possibility. A lot of Democrats who don't like Hillary Clinton are also looking at Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, and some are looking at Gary Johnson also.
Okay, Christopher Conover, thank you so much. And on next week's program, we'll take a look at what many say is one of the most watched congressional races in the country. That's Congressional District 2. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us.